Welcome to the Carnivore Cast, a podcast focused on the carnivore diet and lifestyle, with practical advice from successful carnivores, citizen scientists, and top researchers. I'm your host, Scott Myslinski, and I'm here to speak with experts and experienced carnivores to get answers to your biggest and meatiest questions while helping you live your best life as a carnivore. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. Dani Conway at carnivore.keto.fitness has lived a meat-based keto/carnivore diet for the last 15 years with amazing results in terms of her own weight loss, hormonal issues, gut health, mental health, and more. And as a result of her own success, she decided to dedicate her career to helping others with the same struggles. She believes in an individual approach where no one size fits all and specializes in functional medicine testing and truly focusing on getting to the root cause of symptoms. Welcome to the show, Dani.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very excited to chat with you today. A ton of people have recommended you to come on the show, both guests and listeners. So I think a lot of people will be excited for this episode. I am. How did you come across this lifestyle 15 years ago? And what was your personal health history before then that led you to it?
Yeah. So I came across this lifestyle out of just pure, utter frustration for not getting results, doing all the diets, all the restriction, all the yo-yos, dieting. I was 65 pounds overweight on a fat-free diet. I counted everything from calories to points to, everything. And it was just kind of like a last-ditch effort. There was no social media at that time. There was no Facebook pages, Instagram pages, groups, communities, nothing. So I sort of just fell into finding out about low carb somehow through people that I was involved with in the fitness industry. And then just kind of started down a path of, like I said, I was looking to do something different because everything that I was doing, including high protein diets, lots of cardio, lots of, the wrong exercise, which I know now. And so that just kind of, I just started doing different things. And I also started to notice that in general, I had a lot of bad cravings, like food cravings, and excessive hunger was part of why I struggled with the diet so much, because I would just only get so far a few days, and then the excessive hunger and cravings would take over. So I noticed, I did have cravings for ice cream, but I also had cravings for things like steak and cheese. And so I just started to listen to those a little bit more than I was previously. And that was kind of how I got started down that road.
Very cool. And I guess what else? You mentioned counting everything. Do you count macros or use them now with clients?
Yeah, so I've counted on and off for myself most recently. When I do count, it's really to make sure that I'm eating enough on a daily basis. So sometimes I'll notice, I had surgery about 8 months ago, and after that, I was concerned that I wasn't getting enough protein. I wanted to see where I was at, because with surgery comes, lack of exercise and movement. So I wanted to make sure that I supported my body for healing, as well as trying to retain as much muscle as possible. And then as far as clients go, I have clients that really want to count macros and want to understand and know what they should be getting daily. And then I have clients that are very triggered by counting macros. So either approach, my goal for them is intuitive eating. It just sometimes we get there a little bit differently depending on what works best for that client.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And what you talked about, finding your own path. How did you get into, it seems like you naturally fell into carnivore before carnivore was a thing, quote unquote. How did that evolve for you over time?
Yeah. So, I was always very heavy, meat based, even when I first started, in the quote, low carb or keto space. And then more specifically, in in around 2012. So a little bit part of my story, and most recently, is that I had breast implants removed, and I got those implants in 2012. And shortly after I got the implants, I started to have a flare up of various digestive issues. And I also at that point experimented with meat only because there were so many foods that were uh, reactive for me. And so that's when I started to notice, like, I feel pretty good eating a pretty predominantly meat-based, bone broth-based diet, so to speak. And so from there, I experimented on and off. I would add veggies back in because I partly couldn't wrap my brain around, not eating vegetables, that this could actually be a thing. And so it kind of went back and forth from that point on.
Yeah. And what does a day of eating look like for you today? Like, what have you learned? What have you started to implement that you found works well for you individually?
Yeah. So I do a lot of red meat and beef. Beef works really well for me. I don't do so well on chicken. So I have it occasionally. And quite frankly, sometimes I feel really good after I eat chicken and sometimes I don't. So I really just don't eat it that much. I do fish, I do shellfish, salmon, cod, other white fish like halibut, tons of butter and turkey, raw cheese, raw dairy, eggs once in a while. And then I do ride horses as well. So I do, a carnivore base as much as I can smoothie on those days because I have a hard time riding on a full stomach. So I've had to find something to adapt that morning meal in between my workout and going to ride my horse. And a smoothie seems to be the best option for me personally. I know there's a lot of like controversy over protein powder and all of that kind of stuff, but I also believe in doing what works for the individual person. And because of my history of GI issues and the different digestive stuff that I've been through, I am just completely accepted of the fact that I'm okay with smoothies as long as it suits me energetically and keeps me satisfied until I have my first, meal of real meat in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's really smart and makes a lot of sense. And I'm the exact same way. I think people should eat what foods work well for them. Like my wife very much came to carnivore, Marissa, through necessity and needing to find foods that she could tolerate and not have horrible GI issues. And like, turns out certain protein powders work really well for her and certain don't. And to the extent she's able to tolerate them, they can be really helpful in situations, like you said, where, you're managing between workouts and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a great tool and people shouldn't demonize them.
I do try to stick with like a beef protein, limited ingredients. I try to put fresh eggs. I try to use bone broth in my smoothies. I try to use butter or butter powder. So I'm still like very much sticking to animal-based ingredients as much as I can. Yeah. This has to be in a blended, easy to digest format for me, especially with the activity level.
That's great. And what other things, you mentioned a history of digestive issues. Can you talk about that a little bit and what things you found have really helped other than changing foods?
Yeah, absolutely. So prior to starting down the path, I struggled with a lot of bloating, constipation, indigestion was really bad. Those were kind of like my primary symptoms aside from like the cravings because of malabsorption and things like that. But what I really found helpful, because I had a lot of the symptoms even after changing the foods I was eating. So it really helped to like find the root cause, via stool testing and looking for bacterial imbalances, parasites, different other problematic bacteria that contribute to a lot of those symptoms. SIBO is another really, really common one. And that can just cause a lot of underlying issues, even when, the diet is well formulated.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I struggled a lot with
very similar symptoms. Some of my listeners will know definitely the bloating and the indigestion. I had a endoscopy in like 1 year into carnivore, and they were like, there's just like 10 to 15 pounds of food just sitting in your stomach that's not moving. God. And I was like, yeah, that's why I'm in so much pain. So yeah, I can totally relate. And part of your handle is Carnivore Keto Fitness. So I want to talk about the fitness aspect. What is your fitness look like? What are your workouts like? You mentioned going from a workout to a smoothie to riding a horse. So I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So I've always been super passionate about the fitness side of things, partly because I do love to be active. And then also partly because, years ago when I was doing all the different, yo-yo diets and just basically had the goal of weight loss in mind, I was sort of conditioned, as we all are, that exercise causes weight loss. So as a result of that, I did hours of cardio, like 2 to 3 hour spin classes at a time. And I loved it. But I also did realize that I was like tanking my hormones more than they were already tanked. And I was only in my 20s at the time. So, as time progressed, I got into more resistance training. It took a long time before I was able to sort of just drop that cardio mentality. In fact, I find that now even I have to, maintain a lot of like even self-talk of telling myself like focus on the resistance training because my default is just to go back to the cardio.
Yeah.
And then, throughout the years, I got more into, like I said, the resistance training, bar style workouts, because they're very muscle based, but very low impact both physically and on hormones for like rebalancing kind of thing. And I also was finding that as clients were coming to me, of course, they were learning the wrong things or they had the wrong mentality as far as, quote unquote, doing cardio and exercise and all of that. So I, would combine what I learned personally with, talking to them about their program and redoing, like working on some program design with them, helping them start resistance training if they hadn't already started it, or if they felt like it wasn't working, we would kind of make some tweaks and things along the way, and that kind of thing. Now, as far as I've been riding horses since I was, quite young. Started again as an adult at about 30, which is about 15 years ago. And so I ride my horse 5 days a week, which is obviously, activity and exercise. So I do a shorter, like bar style workout to warm up my body prior to the days that I ride. And then have my smoothie, like we were talking about, and then head out to the barn and do that as well.
A lot of people ask me about how to make liver more tasteful and how to cook it or incorporate other organ meats on carnivore. Optimal Carnivore can help you do just that with their grass-fed organ complex. It was created by carnivores for carnivores. They start by sourcing 100% grass-fed organ meats from New Zealand, gently freeze-drying the organs and encapsulating them into convenient bovine gelatin capsules. Just 6 of these capsules a day is the same as eating an ounce of raw organ meat. I personally take these every single day, as does my wife. Even though we both eat liver and other organ meats, our ancestors would have eaten the whole animal. And this unique blend has 9 different organs, including beef liver, brain, thymus, kidney, spleen, etc. And I think it's great to get a daily dose of these organs when you can. So it covers all your bases, whether you're at home or traveling. What's also cool is they plant a tree for every product sold, which helps the environment. So visit www.optimalcarnivore.com/carnivorecast and use the code carnivore10 to receive 10% off your purchase. Thanks, and back to the show.
Yeah, that's really cool. It sounds like you found a great balance instead of things that are you can enjoy a lot and they're also supportive of your health in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And, it took a while because like I said, my nemesis is that I love physical activity, right? So quite a few years ago, I wasn't so smart about it, and I would my workouts were too intense, and then I would get out to the barn and I would have no energy left. And so I did go through a process of like a lot of what didn't work in order to find what did work. And it was a lot of energy draining and realizing that stuff was tanking my hormones. And I had to be, more careful if I was really going to have this sort of active lifestyle, but be able to also have an active lifestyle that worked and that I had energy for other things throughout the rest of the day versus just like putting all my energy into a workout and then feeling like crap, for the rest of the day as well.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I had, similarly, I was a competitive lightweight rower for 8 years, and a lot of very restrictive dieting, cutting weight all the time, combined with chronic cardio, led to some severe hormonal imbalances for me as well. Coming out of that, like as soon as I stopped competing, I was like, I don't know what to do for exercise. I don't know how to eat. And I was just kind of a mess for a while, until I got into a more solid place nutritionally and training wise. And you mentioned, overcoming the mentality of like, you need exercise for weight loss. Where do you start with someone who comes to you with specifically the weight loss goal, looking for help with that?
Yeah. So my approach, no matter what, is always food first, because if food isn't right, nothing else can be right. So I view food as the foundation for everything that we do. And then once we are able to dial in the food and the macros and get them on the right amount of protein and fat, and, like I said, I don't believe in one size fits all. So some people, of course, they're going to have carbs, and some people do better on zero carb kind of thing. So with that being said, after creating that foundation of what they need for their body and their metabolism, then we start looking at, okay, hormones, what needs to be rebalanced there, digestive health, fitness, where does that fit in? And should they be walking daily to restore? That's, things that are more restorative, or yoga, or can they go for some HIIT exercise and harder resistance training based on all of this stuff that we're already putting in place?
Yeah. Sounds like a very intelligent approach. And can you talk about how hormones play into this and like how you start to diagnose and help with hormonal imbalances?
Yeah. So, hormonal imbalances come in lots of different shapes and sizes and symptoms, right? So again, with hormones, the first approach is always food, because if we're eating the wrong foods for our body and metabolism, whether it's the wrong type of foods or the wrong amounts of proteins, fats, and carbs, that all affects our hormone balance or imbalance. So again, once that is dialed in, then continuing to look down that path in terms of like functional testing. So I use mostly urine testing in my practice to look at adrenal hormones and sex hormones. Sometimes saliva testing. Years ago, it was always saliva testing because urine testing wasn't even available. But the urine testing tends to be the most newest thing in the last few years in terms of testing hormones from a functional level. So there's definitely benefit to blood testing. And it's always a good place to start, where clients will go to their doctor and request, complete blood panel and expanded thyroid with antibodies and some other various markers. But then getting into a more functional space of kind of what's happening on a daily basis to look at cortisol imbalances and how the sex hormones are related to cortisol and what's going on with all of the different pathways, because everything is connected. Just because someone has hot flashes doesn't mean estrogen is always the cause. Just because someone has a low libido doesn't mean that testosterone is always to blame. So there's various different idiosyncrasies that need to be looked at within the whole entire hormonal picture to truly rebalance the body from the inside out from a hormone perspective.
Yeah, I really like that. It's not as simple as, you have low tests or your estrogen is too low or something like that. It's definitely all about the interplay. And how do you think about different strategies for men versus women?
So it really kind of depends on what's going on for each person. No matter what, we always have to get the food right. We want to see what the hormones are actually doing rather than guessing based on symptoms. And the reason I say that is because two people even, men and women can present with some of the same symptoms. But when you run the lab work, the lab levels, the hormone levels on the labs can look completely different, which would, which would indicate that they need two completely different protocols. And if you just go based on symptoms like what somebody's feeling, you can end up really messing somebody up if you're only, like I said, if there's no testing or you don't know what's actually happening based on lab work.
Yeah. And I know your website is Nutrition the Natural Way. Is that correct?
Yeah, nutritionthenaturalway.com.
What does the natural way mean to you? Why did you choose that tagline?
So basically because that food is the foundation thing that I was just talking about. So really just a really clean, real food approach. And because food is the foundation for everything that we do before diving into the hormones, the digestion, many times just quote unquote fixing the food piece fixes a lot of different things, right? And then there's other times where people have chronic hormone or gut issues going on that the further testing is needed. But no matter what, the food always has to be first. The nutrition always has to be right. It always has to be a natural approach with, removing processed foods, trans fats, processed fats, all of that. And then again, going from there.
Yeah, that's great. And Dani, what are you looking forward to? What are some goals you have over the next year for your practice, for yourself personally? What are some things that you're looking out towards?
So I'm obsessed with continuing my education, honestly. And so I just completed a new gut health certification. And I just started working on another a midlife women hormone mastery certification. So I'm just looking forward to diving in more there to be able to help more women. Personally, so on the horse topic, so my horse actually had some unexpected emergency surgery about a month ago.
Wow.
And so that, she's on rest now, what we call stall rest, and just walking for 3 months. And so, emotionally, mentally for me, for somebody who's an athlete and rides 5 days a week, it's a change. And, accepting of the fact that she did survive, thank God. It's something that some horses aren't as lucky as she was. And as her human, I'm going to survive not riding 5 days a week. But that being said, it's also given me a chance to just kind of look at this a little bit differently, work on some things in my practice and, different coaching things that I'm doing and that kind of thing, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely been really challenging mentally for me, like if I'm just being honest. And it's also been rewarding because it's just given me a little bit more time to maybe do some things that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being vulnerable about that. I think it's easy to paint the picture that those things aren't happening, but everybody's dealing with it.
Yeah. The other thing that I would share too is that, and I know, as I shared earlier, like I had surgery 8 months ago. So I had breast implants removed. I had explants, what's called explant surgery, because I had trouble with my implants for many years, pretty much since 3 weeks after I got the implants, I had symptoms that started that, of course, the doctor said, oh, there's no way that those symptoms could be related to the implants. I lived with a lot of that that was 2012. It's 2021 now that I just got them out, like in March. And so, I'm also super passionate about sharing that story, even though it's not something I'm proud of, especially as a health practitioner. I didn't do the research I should have done prior to getting those implants. But I do want to share that with women so that either kind of twofold. Number one, if women are considering them, all I say, I would never tell someone not to do something, but I would say, like, do the research you don't want to do and be 100% certain that this is what you want, because I didn't do that research and maybe that would have changed what I actually ended up doing.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of it is that they are truly when I talk about finding the root cause to get rid of the symptoms, they are truly an underlying cause for everything from digestive issues to autoimmune problems, thyroid. The list just goes on.
Wow.
Toxicity issues. And I know that there's a lot of women with implants struggling that maybe haven't connected the implants to those challenges, but yet they're wondering why their autoimmune issues don't, they haven't been able to heal them or improve them, or they've only gotten to a certain point in their healing journey and they haven't been able to get further than that. And that's because they are the root cause of many, a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I can see how that'd be very challenging to talk about, and good for you for being brave and not letting that stop you from helping others. That's really, really commendable.
Thanks so much.
Well, Dani, this has been fantastic. It's been great getting to know you a bit better, learn more about your story, and how you help folks as well. I think folks will really, really dig this. Where can people find out more about you? And I'll, of course, have links to all of your stuff in the show notes.
Yeah. So Instagram is carnivore.keto.fitness. My website, again, nutritionthenaturalway.com. Those are probably the two best places. I do have a YouTube channel that I'm recently dusted off, so to speak.
Yeah, I saw you were posting a lot of videos the last couple of days.
Yeah, but those are probably the best places that your listeners can reach out.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'll have links to all of that. And thanks again for your time today, Dani. It's been great.
Thanks so much for having me.
If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carnivore Cast. If you enjoyed this episode, please review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And share it with a friend. What questions would you like answered, or who would you like to hear from in the carnivore research community? You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at CarnivoreCast, or go to carnivorecast.com. You can also email me at info@carnivorecast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it carnivore.